If you play tennis long enough, it's gonna happen to you. Tennis elbow. Elbow and that little crease right above it, that dimple right there. Yep, that's where you feel it. It's the worst. Today, I talk about 3 things you can do with your equipment to help you minimize, get rid of, never get tennis elbow. Check it out. First piece of equipment, the racket. When you're thinking about your tennis racket, the best piece of advice I can give you, demo, try out tons of rackets and find which one feels good. The difference in these rackets is there's something called RA stiffness, which is measured on this Babolat RDC machine. It gets a rating between, I don't know, like 50 and 80. 80 being the stiffer racket, 50 being more flexible when you hit it. So you can look up some of those things and figure out why on earth you would want a stiffer racket, less stiff racket, what your preference is, why. So I got a couple of rackets. This is my go-to, the Wilson Pro Staff 97. This one is definitely stiffer, I think, on the RA ratings. It's in the high 60s, maybe 70. So fairly stiff rack. I love the control out of this thing because I can swing as hard as I want and I can keep the ball in the court, and I like that for a heavy topspin, so it works great for my game. Conversely, this racket, the Focal, is probably in the low 60s, so a little more forgiving. This racket's really known to have more of its give to it, not just because of the frame, but there's this catapult system that's built into the side here, and this racket pockets the ball longer and easier on your arm, so real different feels in these 2 rackets. Again, go demo it, check out rackets, see what you like. You gotta like this thing in your hand. So maybe a common misconception is people think the stiffer the racket is, the less pop it gets, where the more flexible it is, the less pop you get, the more ball comes off of it. But actually when the racket's giving, right, it's absorbing that, and you might not get as much pop as a stiff racket because when the ball hits it, it compresses on the strings and bounces off. So if this doesn't give, I think there's a physics lesson here. The ball compresses more and bounces off. So I would say stiffness is more about feel, and then the stiffer the racket is, the more control you have. And it's just where you are in your game and the kind of forgiveness and feel you want out of your racket. Hey, Dr. Topspin here, coming to you from White Columns Country Club in Georgia. Hope these tips are helping out your tennis game. Give it a smash if you like what you're seeing. Second factor that you control for tennis elbow is the type of string you put in your racket. So you can put the softest, which is natural gut, which I've got in the crosses of this particular racket. There's a multi-filament, which I actually have in the mains of this racket. Then you've got a synthetic gut in that same place, and then you start to hit polyester, which I play with in my go-to racket again. And there's different varietals. You can do a hybrid string job like I did here, so multi-filament and a gut in a really soft racket that pockets the ball. So this thing is designed, it's really hard to get tennis elbow with this particular racket. Now my go-to setup, I got a poly string and a stiff racket. But again, so you look at the difference in string, from gut being your softest, poly being your firmest. Again, you got to tinker with it. You find the racket you like, then find the string you like. All right, one more factor to consider in your racket to avoid tennis elbow. So we've talked about the frames, we've talked about the type of strings, but the third and last factor is the tension. So how tight do you want the strings? So I string mine with at like 57 pounds, single string, but I know with these polys, after about a hitting session or 2, they lose 4 or 5 pounds. And it ends up kind of where I want it to be. Where this one, I did a mix of it all. So this one's probably in the mid 50s, super soft string. But the difference in these 2, this one, tons of control. I can swing as hard as I want. I give up on power, but I gain on control. So I'm gonna hit more balls in, and that's what I like for my game. This one, less swing, but I get pop and the ball goes flying from it. But my chances of tennis elbow with this one, greatly less than this one. You gotta demo stuff, try it out. There's so many great choices in our sport. Give it a whirl. I hope this helps. Hey, thanks for hanging today. I hope these tips helped out your tennis game. I'm out.